In this episode, we'll explore the relationship between the state and the market. Are they the same thing? Now, one of the fundamental differences between proponents of free market capitalism and proponents of communism is our definition of the market, as well as the way we view government. Communists will often make the claim that government is an arm of the market, and therefore, claiming that government, not the market, is to blame for induced suffering is fallacious. Fallacious? Fallatio? They are one and the same, according to people such as Peter Joseph, the de facto founder of the Zeitgeist movement, which promotes the establishment of an automated, resource-based economy. According to Joseph, market systems will inevitably lead to government, so you cannot claim that without government markets will work perfectly, since markets are what create government. It is a continuum fallacy, according to Peter Joseph, to claim that the market will not result in the establishment of a state. Ultimately, most all the differences between free market advocates and communist proponents will boil down to this crux. Communists and Zeitgeisters will point to a problem with market capitalism. Free marketers will in turn point out that the problem lies with the government's intervention, and the communists, again, in turn, will laugh and try to explain how they're the same thing. In this way, I think that there has been an immense amount of miscommunication and misunderstanding between the two groups. Therefore, it seems imperative to me that we explore the idea that governments are created by the market. Many with whom I have debated online claim that this isn't really an important thing to explore. But again, since every single disagreement between the two groups seems to hinge on the relationship between market and government, I feel that it is absolutely necessary to explore. To summarize Peter Joseph's take on the issue, he claims that government arose as a result of the market's need to secure resources. I can't really go into the details of his argument because I have yet to hear him provide any evidence for the claim. The sentence, quote, "Government arose from the need of the market to secure market resource and interests," end quote, I don't know if that's really a quote, but it's a basic idea, is about as far as I have heard Joseph delve into the issue. So there really isn't much to go on as far as his claims. Luckily for you, however, I have done a fair amount of pondering on the subject myself. And of course, as you know, I'm the most qualified person to do that. Joke at myself. First off, I'll let you in on a little secret. The free market proponent's definition of the market is different from that promoted by Peter Joseph and the Zeitgeist community. It appears as though many who don't agree with Peter Joseph's entire ideology have, nonetheless, adopted his definition of the market by default. They, in all likelihood, haven't spent the time to dig into the roots of the definition, and so are probably not aware of what their definition of the market is. That's not a smack in the face, by the way. That's just to say that most people tend not to take the time to really delve into the philosophical underlying principles that are invoked. The definition of the market, according to Peter Joseph, is resource allocation. That's it. Just plain old resource allocation. Differences, such as theft, quote-unquote finders keepers, trade, etc., don't seem to matter. All the market means to Peter Joseph and many others is the accumulation of resources. The methods matter not. By contrast, the definition used by free market proponents is the mutual, voluntary exchange of resources, goods, and services. I'm sure you can already spot that there is some amount of disparity between the two. For one, Peter Joseph's definition seems not to mention force or theft. In fact, force and theft seems, to Joseph, to be completely irrelevant. On the other hand, free marketers say that the free market can only work when it is devoid of force. All exchange must be voluntary. With this in mind, let's embark on a philosophical journey into the establishment of government systems in order to determine whether or not what Joseph advocates, that markets give rise to government, is true. Many millions of years ago, food and other resources were scarce and uncontrollable by the organisms by whom they were required. Organisms were unable to cultivate crops, and they were unable to corral livestock. Instead, they had to search around for food. Plants yielded some sustenance, but at that point in time their nutritional value was relatively small. Hundreds of thousands of years of human engineering through what we refer to as artificial selection, which I have a small issue with, considering that all organisms interact with and modify the genetics of one another. For instance, bugs and plants. Yes, hundreds of thousands of years of human engineering through what we refer to as artificial selection has led to the arisal of plants that have far more nutritional value than they once did. Legumes, pomes, grasses, and roots were once much smaller and indeed unrecognizable. Thus, not only was the nutritional value significantly less millions of years ago than it is now, but there were also droves of other organisms that were after the same food sources. A cluster of berries that is harvested one week may very well be eaten by an organism the next week. Plants would have also been subject to disease and adverse weather the same as they are today. All these factors combined to render plant-based food sources extremely scarce. Relative to today's standards, of course, and even today's per capita standards. As with plants, animal food sources were also scarce. But unlike many plants, there are some exceptions. Animals could fight back against attacks. They could also relocate if they came under frequent attack. Furthermore, a hunt was not guaranteed to be successful. Animals could escape capture or death. Again, all these factors came together and made the world of millions of years ago vastly different from the world we see today, where we can keep pigs, cows, and chickens in pens, and where we can grow highly nutritious plants in large fields. The tremendous scarcity of the prehistoric world led to conflict on a massive scale. In order to survive, organisms had to fight one another. Those that did not employ violence or force to secure essential resources were sure to die off. Therefore, when one individual organism among a group proved themselves to be valuable in securing resources, they were not only valued by the group for their services to group survival, but they were also emulated by other group members. Because their skill in the hunt, or their strength and ferocity in the defense of group interests led to an increased capacity for group survival, it would have been advantageous not only to ensure that they were protected from harm, but also to mimic their methods. Taking the advice or orders of such valuable group members would have been wise, considering the fact that their methods had demonstrated to increase group longevity and survival capacity. In this way, the estimation of the practical authority of skilled or knowledgeable group members led to the establishment of presumed authority. Group members would mimic traits that were common to those who were granted delegational authority. Think about how today those who exude confidence earn respect, often regardless of their actual skill or knowledge. A showcase of confidence instinctively leads others to presume another as a sort of charismatic authority, or delegational authority. People naturally follow those who exude confidence because they seem to be knowledgeable on a given subject. Again, this is because at some point millions of years ago, it became advantageous to do what the truly experienced, knowledgeable hunter or defender directed. Where's the food? How do we ensure a successful hunt? How do we fend off attacks? Those who knew how to perform these tasks effectively were valued by the group and became a delegational authority. They ensured the provision of food and security for the other group members. And again, emulating their traits would have been advantageous as well. Today, people still emulate various types of authority in an effort to achieve social validation. We copy the traits of our favorite celebrities. We copy the things that have demonstrated to be socially valuable. It was the same millions of years ago, when successfully fighting for resources and security was essential to survival. In this way, Peter Joseph is correct in claiming that the government is an outgrowth of market systems. However, his definition of the market is, again, the accumulation of resources regardless of tact. And again, this is not how free market advocates define the market. Once again, free market advocates refer to the market as the mutual exchange of resources, goods, and services. By this definition, the government is not an outgrowth of market systems, but is instead an outgrowth of animal and especially mammalian hierarchies, which are themselves an outgrowth of the need to survive in a world of violent competition over extremely limited resources. Social stratification, or class struggle, is seen throughout the mammalian world, from wolf packs to gorillas, from horses to hippos. So when you look at it from the perspective of the free market advocate, voluntary mutual exchange, claiming that markets perpetuate class struggle is, well, silly. In human societies, wherever we see forced, or what Peter Joseph might refer to as structural, stratification, there is almost always a government entity pulling the strings. And if, as I have been attempting to explain, government is not the result of uncoerced market exchange, but is instead a result of the forceful control of resources, then communizers can no longer claim that stratification is the result of markets. Capiche? Listen to it again, I dare ya. In almost every area that we see suffering and violence that carries the perception of legitimacy, it turns out to be state-supported, state-propagated, state-funded in some way. Conversely, wherever there is prosperity, long-term, pluralistic, sustainable prosperity, increasing the quality of life, there are markets at work. Can you see why it is so important to explore whether or not market and state are the same?